Oh, that's a nice beer.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I trust you can
Good
hear
evening.
us. Oh, Sean's in as well. I only announced it yesterday. I didn't expect anyone to show up. We got John, Chris, Gareth, Sean, a couple of others, I think, up there somewhere.
Excellent.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to live news for June. Scott is working on video. We may have that at some point.
When my experience isn't being improved.
Yeah. But during the meanwhilst, we can talk about what shit we've been up to, which is quite a lot this month. Scott came over, and I entertained him for a few days. Then he went to sunnier climes, and then I entertained him again for a few days. And we went to Revival. So we did a couple of trips while he was here. We went to the much-mentioned Anderton boat lift, which is not too far away from me. Lifts canal barges from one canal to another. A good old Victorian
Fantastic,
piece.
amazing piece of hardware.
Yeah, it's huge, absolutely huge, as you might imagine, to lift a barge.
The idea being for folks, it's a solution if you have two different levels of terrain. Say, one's a couple 100 foot or whatever higher than the other. You want to get boats from one level to the other. You bring the streams where they're nearest in height, and then you have a double elevator. So one goes to the higher level, one goes to the lower. You sail the boats in, then they change places and go on to their respective locations. So it's an incredible solution to moving boats in between different terrain levels. Just an amazing piece of hardware.
Yeah. And most of it is done by weight, adding a bit more water to the one that's coming down or whatever. So there's very little power needed to actually drive the thing. Gravity is your friend. We took a trip to Arcade Club. Scott?
Now, that was a blast. I had not been. Random had been, Mike had been many times. It's just minutes away from, their respective places. But it was Arcade Club. It's an interesting study. They basically took a warehouse that would have been used for, manufacturing or storage of a long since defunct industry. So it's basically a solid building, but with, what are you going to do with it, right? So they had a couple things there. There's like a room escape business where it's one of those, room escape experiences where you get locked in a room and you have to find the clues to get out of the room. And I was joking with UK on the way up that, a bunch of us, Army vets should go do it. Just roll up, strap a little Semtex to the door, boom, and it just head right out. Probably not well received,
We escaped.
And then in this warehouse space, they have a 2-story arcade, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's got a bar and a restaurant on each floor. If you're in the UK, if you live there, go check it out. If you're from elsewhere and you're visiting, go check it out. A couple hundred games, a lot of rarities like Time Pilot, New Zealand Story, all in just wonderful condition. Pinball collection. They were obviously doing some work on those. Those are sort of problematic, but just a neat, fun, environment, and met some interesting characters there, didn't we, Mike?
We did. Speaking of New Zealand story, we have a little Australia story.
We do,
yeah.
So Random and Mike leave the room, and in the course of their time out of the room, they come back into the bar, and this young Australian lady is biting my ear. And she just looks and says, "I'm going to bite your ear." I'm like, done, right? And I'm like,
hang on. To start with, it was her Manc friend was like, said to everyone at the bar, "Don't you think my friend sounds American?" At which point I prodded you on the shoulder, and you were like, "No, not at all."
Not at all.
She said to me, where do you think my friend's from? I said, say something. So she said something. I said, Australia. She said, how do you know that? Everyone thinks she's American. Not everyone you know has travelled, my dear.
Yes, some people like you are a local hick. But so moments later, she goes over and talks to Random and Mike, and has a very specific request for Random and Mike. Mike, what'd she ask you two fellas about?
So somehow we got onto the topic of dogging. I'm not entirely sure how that began.
So she asked me how I knew you guys, and so I said, well, to be fair, I met them on the internet, and the first time I met them in real life, we went dogging. And to start with, she looked a bit shocked, and then she was kind of a bit quizzical and interested, and was like, "Hang on, so you guys go dogging?" Yeah, of course we do.
And her particular request was to be able to watch me and Random dogging with each other. She was bang up for watching me and Random make sweet music together, which we politely declined the invite to. But then she said, "Well,
you did.
Well, I did, yeah. Random was bang up for it." So she said, "Well, do you think it might happen in the future? Because I can give you my number. You can text me and I'll come and watch." She was a bit of a strange one.
She then appeared to be asking her boyfriend, whispering in his ear, saying, "Oh, come on, come and take me dogging." Yeah. And he kind of didn't look so interested, did he?
He didn't, no. And at first I didn't realise they had boyfriends with them until said boyfriends appeared.
That was the strangest part, because they're like...
Yeah. So, we up for fucking or what? And then the boyfriends appeared.
And then it was still like, are we up for fucking or what?
Yeah, I'm like, wow, that's a strange one.
I'm going to go play Sega Rally.
That was the Goobert move.
Yeah.
There, your 10 young ladies are down. Let me go to play Sega Rally instead. But no, it was strange.
Very strange. And
I having sex. Right.
Right. And I came to not a revelation, but a realization. They've got in there a great looking Asteroids Deluxe. And I've always said I prefer the original Asteroids. But having played that, just because, I mean, the original is just a black screen, vector game, white animation on black. But that thing has the reflected screen pointing upwards and the huge backdrop in there with all the rocks and the space behind it. And
it's a hell of a machine.
It looked amazing. I think the original gameplay, but looking into that cab was just unreal. There's a few too many different enemies and spaceships and stuff for my liking, but it is a wonderful looking game. It was great. And then we encountered some more strange English folk. We took a trip down to the Centre for Computing History down in Cambridge.
I'll be doing a harder flashback on that very topic. And I got a bunch of photos that we're going to post up to the page. But I think we want to wait to get those guys on so that it makes sense of all the content,
Yeah. Scott, do you want to explain your encounter in Cambridge?
Well, our encounter. And Mike, you'll have to fill in any missing details lost to history. So Mike and I, we go to the Cambridge. Damn it! All right, quit screwing with these cameras. We go. Fuck. We go to the Cambridge Computer Museum, and then we roll back to the hotel, right? At which we're just go to the bar, we're just going to have some beers and chill out, and all that's going according to plan. We run into these two dudes that are construction workers there. There's one dude, we'll call him the dude, and then there's the big guy. Now, the big guy looks like he has had his nose hammered flat on his face a couple times. The big guy is drinking beer with us and all, and everything's cool. Like, we're just having a good time. And I'm over by the bar getting a drink, and the bar, like the reg desk and all this stuff are right there. I see these two dudes walk in U.S. Air Force flight suits, right? And, I take a look at their patches. Okay, they're 336, so they're Eagle drivers. They fly F-15 Eagles. So one's going to be the pilot, one's going to be the weapons system operator, Wizzo. And at that time, just a day before, the Iranians, as Iranians are wont to do, were blowing up ships in the Gulf, right? So they were going out and planting mines, and they had been caught like red-handed. I mean, there's like the video taken from one of our cruisers of the ship sailing up and planting the mines, and later retrieving an unexploded one. The guiltiest can be, and they're like, "Do not believe the American lies, death to America," all that kind of shit. And this is not the old regime that sends them billions of dollars on pallets, of cash in the night and helps them get nuclear weapons. This is the regime that's like, nah, not here, buddy. So, it's obvious what those guys were doing, and they were passing through on the way to a deployment. So I just said, "Hey, 336 Eagle drivers, huh? You guys on a no notice?" His head cranes around like, "The fuck is an American doing over here?" And we get to chatting and shit, and they had some questions about some things I had worked with and knew about, and we're chit chatting and everything, having a good time. And we'll just refer to them as the pilot and the Wizzo, because we don't want to put these guys' names out there or get them in trouble. So the Wizzo comes down and is drinking with us and hanging out. And for whatever reason, bad vibrations start to develop between the big guy and the Wizzo. And it's getting tense. Like, at one point, Wizzo goes back over to the bar to order a drink. And big guy says something like, I remember, Mike, maybe you remember that night. He says something, and the guy's like, "Well, what then?" I'm like, these two are fucking gonna go at it. And so I'm thinking, all right, fucking Air Force. I'm gonna fucking end up in a bar fight, fucking backing up Air Force, And poor UK Mike, he's in England. He's got like what the fuck's he gonna do? Jump in with U.S. Air Force, and against his own countrymen or whatever. This is a very awkward situation. At which time the big guy decides to make it even more awkward. And I've been in some sketchy places in my life. I've been around some stuff, but I've never actually had somebody pull out a baggie of cocaine, take a car key, pick up a pile, a heaping, helping spoonful of fucking cocaine and go, "You boys want some?" To which UK Mike and I are like, "Nah, we're good, dude." And he's like, "All right," and I'm like, "Oh shit," because probably a couple seconds later, the paranoia and the aggressiveness and all the things that go with doing that much cocaine are going to come into play. So at that moment, said pilot returns downstairs. I'm like, all right, I got to get him to get his boy out of here. So the Wizzo has still been drinking a bit more and is, as it turns out, has a very determined personality type, shall we say. So I go over to the bar. I'm like, "Hey, look, here's what's going on. Your boy, a little bit drunk, and there's some bad fucking vibes going on with this other guy. The big guy over in the corner has been taking some bumps of coke and is pretty fucking tuned up. You want to get your boy out of here now." And he's like, "Right on, I'm on it." So pilot goes over and gets Wizzo up to his room to where, he can not be there and keep ratcheting shit up. And the big guy is curious of where his friend went. So said pilot comes back downstairs and we chit chat a bit. And it's kind of like, keeping things calm. But big guy is definitely agitated and wanted to play more with his friend. So as we're like sort of getting towards, all right, what the fuck is going to happen here? The rest of their group comes in, which is, the head senior leadership and all that. So we kind of just, walk over there. "Hey, time to go. Get the pilot over with the group. Hey, just blend in with the herd. Get the fuck out." At which point I walk. I'm like, "Are you guys in the Army? Do you guys fly airplanes?" Like, I'm a fucking just a dumb tourist. Like, "Yeah, I was just talking to this guy down here. They just wandered in a few minutes ago. Yeah, I'll get you later, right?" And it was quite the I don't know. I've never been offered like just a giant chunk of coke, powdered coke off of a fucking car key before, Mike. So in Cambridge, England, of all places.
Yeah, it's a new one on me as well, I must admit. I've been offered coke before, but never a key as a device to take it with. You want a bump? No, I'm good, thanks. Adi came down and met us just before that as well. He'd gone by the time all the shenanigans was going on. But yes.
Yeah, 80 missed a good time.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because we had 80 brought down a gift basket for me, as 80 likes to do. And 80 always has the funniest way of saying things. He's like, "So Scott, since this is your first time in the UK, would you like a gift basket? I've got some things my mom likes." I'm like, all right, whatever, But no, he brought over some amusing items, and actually some very delicious brown sauce that I just had with some breakfast here not 2 hours ago. So.
And then, of course, we drove up from there to Revival. If you weren't there, you missed out on a good expo. We had a good time. We had the booth there, of course. The Lucky Dip. Got rid of a few more of Random's cables. I think it was 4 panels, something like that. You'll be hearing those over the coming months. We did a Sensible Software one with Bullfrog Productions, a Spectrum-based one that declined the drunk one of the guests got, and a Commodore one. So you'll be hearing those.
Well, would we say declined or got increasingly amusing? There was it was really funny because Mr. Butler, of course, shows up, right? And I've been texting with him earlier in the day, and there's we sent him a picture of just all of us, like, "Hey, we're waiting, dude." And he's like, "My eyes." So Mr. Butler shows up, and he immediately tells us about some of our upcoming panel guests. And he goes, "Yes, we were just at an expo with him. Shocking scenes, simply shocking scenes."
Yeah, shocking scenes.
Yeah,
which I think we put forward as a show title.
Oh yes. Now the funny part is, at this moment, Butler, in one paragraph, simultaneously recounts how he had to be, as he put it, carried home in a bucket because he was so wrecked. And then talks about the shocking scenes of this other fellow in exactly the same state, and with no sense of irony in between, which I truly found just incredibly funny.
Yeah.
That reminds me of last night when I started the top 10, and Sparkle says, "I don't like Disney video games," and then brings in 2 Disney video games and starts off the first one with, "I love Disney video games."
Yeah. You missed out, Random, on an expo.
I did.
And you were missed. We were Benless.
Concert.
We were Benless.
There was no little Ben either.
No.
We did, in all fairness, attempt to guilt Random into showing up, but to no avail. He held very firmly.
Yeah. So, what else have we been up to this month? I'm just about out. Oh, Scott broke my MAME cab. Although it had been dying on his ass for a while. The motherboard's died in there completely, so I've built a new machine. So that's up and running now, and I've decided I'm going to get another cab and do a vertical screen cab. So I've got the PC pretty much ready to go. Looking for a donor cab at some point soon. And that's about it, I think, for me.
Yeah, I don't really think I've done a great deal at all. Certainly retro gaming wise.
Yeah. Well, what was it you damn it, you were telling me about something, and when we were at Arcade Club, I was going to try and remember it for the news. If I do, I'll bring it up.
All right. I spent the early part of the month playing a bunch of Skyrim VR again. And that was good fun. Yeah, just been been all over the place. Went to Paris for a party on the Seine one night, and then back home again, and been to a Harry Potter concert, which had a lot less cosplayers than I would have hoped, which was a shame. Apart from the orchestra, a lot of them were actually dressed up, which was quite fun. seeing like a Death Eater violently playing the violin at the front of it. But yeah, it's been pretty busy little June for me. July is going to be a lot better. Amber's going away, so I'm just going to sit around playing games for a good month.
Yeah, I excuse me. I got a little bit of gaming in on the flight over and the flight back. I played some Zelda. Went through the new Mario RPG style game. It's okay. It kind of goes from impossibly hard to boringly easy from scene to scene, and not necessarily the best guidance of what to do next. But I'm gonna give it a chance, see it through. It's an okay game. Yeah, and then just all the running about Europe. Not a lot of time to play too much. I ended up going down to Toulouse, France. Spent some time there, just hanging out, visiting friends, and seeing the sights, visiting some of the medieval fortresses, and going out to dinner and drinks and all that, and just have overall a pretty good time. Yeah, it was good to see all those guys. And Mike, we found out about that we might be ending up in Poland.
Yeah, we did. Simon's mentioned it. You may have heard when you're listening back to this in an incredibly long dinosaur pie. He went out to an expo in Warsaw, and a few of the other people at Revival that I've spoken to were going, or had I spoke to them at Manchester. They were going and caught up with them at Revival, and nobody had a bad thing to say about it, other than some of the attractions and are a bit spread out, so you've got a cab ride between things. But the expo itself sounded great. Lots of enthusiastic locals into the retro scene. Cheap beer, cheap hotels, cheap food. And so, yeah, we're looking at going out there next year. So if you're able to get to Poland, start planning now. It's probably around May, June time again. So
you can fly in, float in, or drive in.
Yeah, very possible you can drive. Unless you're in the States.
Butler made an interesting comment about it. He said that they'll just reuse buildings with no thought of cleanup or preparation. And it's like, he was saying that, like, well, the expo was at this former bus factory, and it's like, yeah, they just have a bunch of rusting buses that haven't run since the 70s just sitting on the side, and they just go right in and set up a retro expo. But the way he described the quality of the expo was incredibly enthusiastic, and certainly, I mean, we're not joking. It sounds like something we'd want to go to, just to see something very different.
Yeah, so it's definitely on the radar for next year. Random, did you figure how to update the prizes page?
I have not updated the prizes page because my VPN's broken, so I can't get hold of all of my files that are at home.
Okay.
And do that properly.
Okay. When you figure out how to update it, I've got an Atari Flashback 2 to give away. This is it.
Oh, good.
It's just the unit. You can use a kind of multi-power adapter to power it, and of course you can use your existing joysticks, even probably Genesis gamepads. So that is the Flashback 2. It does work, and that is the good one, the moddable version. So if you want to get all fancy, you can stick a cartridge slot in there.
And I've got a Retron 77 to give away. We just need to come up with a little contest or something. So think it over, boys. Next month we'll announce something for that.
Okay. In the meantime, for live news this time around and prizes, we have a prize alarm. So when you hear this sound, you can type in the live chat window the phrase "shocking scenes," and you can claim a prize. If you go to retrogamingroundup.com/prizes, you can pick a prize. There's some of Random's books up there, and there's also an Atari Flashback 2 that can be added to the list as well. So I guess we should get into some news then.
Okay.
One from me here to get us started. Team Sonic Racing laps the competition. Random. You had a vested interest in this at one point. Sumo Digital's Sonic the Hedgehog kart racing series had been in the garage for 7 years before last week's launch of Team Sonic Racing. But the time off seems to have served the franchise well. Do you know anything about this new one?
I know a little bit about it. It went to the newly acquired Nottingham studio, which was, what were they called? The guys who did Time Splitters, essentially. It was that studio predominantly that got bought by Sumo. I know the network programmer from the last Sonic games had to go down and help them out with that. I've played a bit of it, and I'm not so sure on it. Because it's team based. It feels like what you're doing doesn't. You can win, but you can still overall lose because especially if you've got AI, because they can end up just being really shit and losing, and it's all based on like the overall team position, and because it's had to accommodate. It's not really accommodating any more races, but they've made the tracks wider to kind of feel like it's having to accommodate more races. So for me, it loses a lot of sense of speed and a bit of interest in the levels. So I don't think it's anywhere near as good as All Stars Transformed was, and perhaps not even Sonic Superstars Racing. But perhaps I'm also biased on that. I don't know, but yeah, it's got a reasonable reception in the press. So
Maybe. Here's one that got a much better reception. Another revised racing game, Crash Team Racing, puts the Bandicoot back at number 1. Having dominated the charts for the past 2 summers, Activision is aiming for a hat-trick with the chart-topping debut of Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. I love the original, and this one is one of the biggest games of the year so far, I think. Let me just scroll down here. It's the 3rd best launch of the year so far, behind Sony's Days Gone and the Resident Evil 2 remake. So it's doing well. It's been received very well. Haven't played it, but I do like a bit of Crash Team Racing.
Got one here submitted by Mike James, and it says Iron Maiden suing Iron Maiden for $2 million. Heavy metal band Iron Maiden has launched legal actions against game developer 3D Realms, publisher of retro first-person shooter Iron Maiden. Lawyers for the legendary British band want $2 million for attempting to trade off of Iron Maiden's notoriety. The Iron Maiden game has been available on Steam since 2018, with a full release set for later this year. It stars bomb disposal expert Shelley Harrison, which lawsuit argues is a nod to Iron Maiden member Steve Harris. It also has a skull in its logo, which lawsuit appears to suggest is a reference to the band mascot Eddie. I don't know. I mean, if it had like Iron Maiden in the title, like the logo, even then at best it's a tribute. Like if I did a game and it was like just like a tribute game to Kiss or something, I don't see it. I mean, it may be more egregious than it indicates, but to me, it just doesn't sound like that big of a deal.
In chat, Chris Lethgow says, Scott, if I were to have a couple of copies of my book mailed to you, would you be willing to use them as prizes during the podcast? Yes, of course we would.
Yeah, of course we would. Yes.
Did he receive his prize that you sent him, Chris Lethgow?
No, because I didn't send it before I left.
Oh.
So I just got back. I've got all the shit. I do have the shit all sitting here, and it will go.
At some point. Another one for you, Scott. An update on one we had, was it last month or the month before? You commented on Video Masters TV's video and the Ferrari used in it. He says, hey guys, thanks for the show notes link. When I added the car in the opening shot, I didn't think much of it until later when I thought about what year that Ferrari was from. Considering my cartoon was set in the 80s, I probably should have found an older model car. So, oops.
It was pretty cool.
I've got one here. Oh, I was going to say that Mike James has sent it in saying WTF, and Sparklepus has replied with, I just backed it, effing brilliant. And this is a Kickstarter for a remote control wand, a handheld wand to hold your remote controls. And this appears to be a table leg that someone has sellotaped an Amazon Fire Stick control to, and is it an LG remote? Various remotes sellotaped to it.
I think
he says the idea
them,
is simple. It's a wand you attach up to 4 remote controls to. There are remote control caddies out there and also universal remote controls for several different devices at one time, but neither of them work very well or achieve the intended result. So, I mean, this would certainly, if you're a household with multiple remote controls, stop you from losing them all over the coffee table. It would hold them together. I'm not sure the $23,000, £23,500 goal is particularly warranted. The pledge backing, the backing things are, for $5 you get a wand of your very own, and for $10 you get 3 of your very own wands.
3. Wow.
3. So that's good value for money. That's, double the price for 3 times the amount of goods.
You need to help it out, though. It's only got 3 backers. It's got £16 of a targeted 23,500.
It has got 69 hours to go, though.
It
so
has.
That's, a magic number.
Wow. So it doesn't look like Sparkle Pussy's going to get his, unfortunately. Maybe he could make his own.
Oh, it doesn't tell you who the backers are, does it? You could see if he was just bullshitting. Not going through
when he sent that message to say he'd backed it, I checked, and there was indeed one backer where there wasn't before, so his story checks out.
Oh, before I go with the item of news I was going to hit, a couple of people have pointed out today, including Josh Switt and a few others, that the Raspberry Pi 4 Model B has been released. Yes. And apparently it's got a butt ton more processing power, can do dual 4K displays, and has up to 4 gigabytes of RAM. I guess it's 1 gigabyte unless you order the 4 gigabyte model.
They do a 1, a 2, and a 4.
1, 2, or 4 configuration.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some comments, people have made like, oh, pretty disappointing how far behind they are, this, that, and the other. Look, it was never going to be cutting edge hardware. That's not the point. The point is that it's cheap and effective. I would love a parallel development path called like the Super Pi, and it's literally still Unix compatible, but it costs 3 times as much as does 10 times more. Okay, great, yeah. But I think there's definitely a market position for the Pi. The Pi has been amazing. I've done so many things with it and will continue to do things with it. So I'm personally glad it's out, and I'm glad they're evolving the way they are.
I think that parallel path might be the Odroid. Do they still make those, Random?
Yeah, they still do. I can't remember what they sort of went away from trying to be Pi compatible and other things, but they still do put out boards. I mean, like there's tons of people that are putting out various things, and they all kind of, some will specialize in SATA ports, and some will specialize in making sure the gigabit Ethernet's really good, and they all have their own little niche markets they're going for.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, there's tons of other single board computers out there, no question. I just like what Pi's doing, and the fact that if you had like a Super Pi that was the same overall architecture, the same, software builds would work on them. So there's tons of people out there making Pi stuff. Let's say, like the folks who do all the RetroPie stuff, were coming up with builds where you would have, click the Super Pi compatible thing, and it dumps in all the ROMs that only run on the higher end one. Things like that. There's tons of great ways to do this. But personally, I'm excited to see it advancing. So I've got one here from Mike James, about 40 years on, celebrating Mattel and television. And it's a nice little article. This guy here saying, I tried to hide my disappointment, but I couldn't. It was Christmas 1983. I wanted a ZX Spectrum. All my friends had one. We're desperately hoping one would be sitting under the tree. Instead, reasons my parents have never explained, I got a Mattel and television console. Now, that is, and he goes on to sort of recount his history and his reflections on it. And I had a similar experience. I got a ColecoVision, and everybody I knew had Atari, wanted Atari. As it turns out, the ColecoVision was, radically advanced from the Atari, closer to the NES in performance, and still a favorite to this day. So, nice little read there.
Yeah, it's crazy. When we started this show, things were turning 30, and here we are. If you do the simple math, 10 years later, things are now turning 40. So I think, and we're turning 50.
One of my personal favorites, Computer Space. I was kind of psyched when it was 40 because, hey, video games are 40 years old, right? And it's about to turn 50. And I'm thinking, oh, crap, 50-year-old video game. The failure rate, and it's not an easy system to troubleshoot. As well as I understand it, it's not easy. The odds of one of those chips eating it is going to happen. And I was having a conversation with a couple of the guys over at the Cambridge Museum there about how eventually, the replacement parts will be DOA. Silicon has a lifespan. These things do degrade. We're going to start to see, okay, I had a 7402 fail, and all my replacements are failed. I mean, there's going to be a point at which it's just going to be a desktop ornament, and even then the fiberglass will start delaminating. These things are going to age. It's going to be eventually unusable and then eventually just a museum piece. So, yeah, it sucks, but I mean, that's still a few decades off, I think. But here we are looking at 50th anniversary of arcade games. Kind of hard to believe it happened in our lifetimes.
Yeah, it is. Something that didn't quite happen is an article on Eurogamer here. Rare footage of the cancelled Earthbound 64. There is an article for you to read. The link is posted in chat and, of course, will be in the show notes page. And there's a little video for you to watch as well. So a nice article about Earthbound 64.
Another
little article here by Mike James submitted. And everything has fallen into place for Tetris. And it's a fairly long article, so I'll just leave it to you in our show notes. But apparently Tetris's 35th anniversary is coming up. Again, kind of hard to believe. But there's some neat stuff coming out in honor of the anniversary. Tetris Effect on PS4. I'll probably have to go download that one and check it out. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, another one from Mike James, which he seems to have sent most of the news in so far. He's just forwarding on just an announcement of Konami revealing adding the Contra collection to their Castlevania anniversary collection that they brought out, which has NES Contra and Super Contra and the Famicom versions. It also has Super C on the Game Boy. Super C on the NES and Operation C on the Game Boy, and also has Contra Hardcore on the Genesis, which is quite an expensive ROM to buy. Well, game cartridge to buy. So having the ROM for cheap is pretty decent. And also the SNES Super Contra Alien Wars, and the EU equivalent of that, which is Super Probotector Alien Rebels. So by all accounts, those compilations are pretty well emulated and decent little collections. So if you're into Castlevania or Contra, you've got some. Most platforms now have a good way to play them all.
So we've got one here which is little more than spam, really, but I'll go through it anyway. And it is a music submission for your podcast. I hope this email finds you well. We are Pepper Juice, a DJ/producer duo from Paris. We would like to submit to you our latest remix of Blackpink's track, Kill This Love. And all I will say is you could do worse than Google the band Blackpink. you might be able to waste 20 minutes or so of your life by looking at pictures and videos of Blackpink.
Ah, I was gonna say that I saw that come in, and I had a listen to the music and thought, well, that's not really targeted for our audience. Because I did think, well, maybe I'll try and hook up with them while I'm in Paris. I've not got any spare time, but if they're that serious about the show, maybe they'll want to meet me. I could probably get them onto the boat party, but yeah, didn't seem like it was particularly aimed at us.
No.
But Blackpink, yeah.
Yeah. Something that is aimed at us is John Romero's free, unofficial 5th Doom episode called Sigil. You will need some files from the original Doom, I think, to play it, and you can play it for free. Should you so choose.
That's cool to go back and, drop something like that for everybody.
Yeah.
Got one here from Eric Ambrose. He says, hello all. This may be old by the time you do news at the end of June, but I saw a trailer for a movie that seems to combine two popular topics on this show, building things and driving really fast. It's called Ford versus Ferrari. I have not heard of this. It's going to be released in November. And it's a biographical drama. It goes into some of the competitions between Carroll Shelby's work and Ken Miles, the GT40 going up against, the Ferraris at the time. I think this looks really good, Eric. Thank you for submitting it, and I certainly will be looking to watch that.
Yeah, I watched the trailer. It looks okay. I think it might get a little bit Hollywood at times, but I think the essence of the story is going to be there, which is good.
This is the one the Grand Tour, not probably the later series, but the series before, finished with a bit of it, didn't it? I think.
Don't recall.
Is that right?
I don't recall.
It seems vaguely familiar that it's been sort of bubbling under the surface for quite a while now.
One here, which kind of relates to the stuff we've been talking about over the last few months, Google Stadia and everyone else jumping in on the streaming games bandwagon. And this is download Minecraft story mode now before it's delisted later this month. So even if you bought the game, and I bought it on PS3 for Millie, but I got the first copy on DVD, and then you download the rest of them, and they're just taking it offline. So even if you've bought it, you're shit out of luck if you need to re-download it and install it anywhere.
And people wonder why I don't like digital distribution
and
insist on buying physical media.
Yeah, it's just a kick in the balls when, you've got all these companies coming out with, streaming games. And then this shows you exactly why streaming games is perhaps not the best idea.
Well, this was all part of the Telltale games, not Traveller's Tales. No, wait, which one? Telltale games.
Telltale.
Blow up, wasn't it? And they went under, and they still had, games that they promised. They were doing episodic games, and they still had things to make. And they laid everyone off, and then got whoever was in charge of it. They knew they were in the shit, and waited until the very last minute before they sort of just turned around to everyone and said, "Oh, sorry, we can't pay you for the last 3 months." And then got a load of money in to then bankroll some other freelancers to finish off episode 3 of The Walking Dead, or part 3 of The Walking Dead, season 3, but not give any of that to the people that they'd laid off, and give them any of the money that they were owed or anything like that. So it was all a big clusterfuck around there. And so slowly all of the Telltale games have been dropping off the stores as they've been running out of their license agreements and things. So digital distribution, it's good at the time. It's a good cheap, well, not sometimes cheap, but a convenient way to play things, contemporary games around the time. But there's no permanence in there. So
No, and I've had people just try and back that up 100 different ways. Oh no, they've promised. I'm like, you know what that promise is worth?
yeah,
Nothing. Because when they fall, all these things fall into decline, right? So when Service or Studio X falls into decline and then somebody else buys it, they're not going to honor those fucking promises. They're basically buying a defunct entity on the cheap that they think they can restore or wring some value out of, which never really works. And yeah, it's just crap. And those promises will not be honored. You're an idiot if you think they will. Got one here submitted by multiple sources to include Spinal Cord and Mike James. And it says, hey guys, I don't know how many of the listeners or hosts care about this sort of thing, but here it goes. And he says basically he purchased a VR headset for his phone for it looks like $1.25. And he says the only reason I have a phone VR headset is to play Virtual Boy games because let's face it, the VR failed. It's because of its lack of content. So he says after searching the internet, he found the only way to play Virtual Boy games on Android phone is to use RetroArch. And even then, the only option is single core that can only do red, blue, 3D. There's some shaders floating around that claim to be able to split the image. So he tries tweaking this thing, and it says not only does it successfully split the red and blue image into left and right, you can mess around with the positions of left and right to fit your eyes and headset. He's also added some options for different pixel palettes because the red is just terrible. If anybody wants to try it out, they can download it from my website. Also, feel free to have a look around. There might be something newsworthy there. The only thing Spinal forgot to do is give us the address for his website.
He did update us. There was a news item with it in there.
Okay, good. Mike, do you know where that is? Okay, there it is.
I've posted it in chat.
Yeah. We'll post that link in chat and in the show notes. So if you want to try out the Virtual Boy shader, thanks to Spinal, it'll hook you up.
Shenmue 3 has been delayed until November.
No one is surprised.
No. The longer-awaited threequel, making up a new word there, will now arrive, so they say, on the 19th of November. Anyone excited for Shenmue 3? I don't think I am.
I've backed it, and I backed it with the thought that I've been back and replayed these games. They don't really hold up in a modern, against modern titles, but they're kind of, I suppose, quaint in a way, and they're of an era. So if they do more of that, I don't know. I guess for me, it's kind of half worth it to continue the story. It would be nice if they were thinking of even getting close to finishing the story with 3, but Yu Suzuki is still saying that this is part 1 of 15 left to go. We're nowhere near, guys. The internet will continue to have to fight for campaigning more Shenmue to finish the story, which is a bit bullshit. But everything they've released, trailers they've released recently around E3, they've got a similar tone to the voice acting, so that's kind of something that I'd like them to keep. So that's interesting for me anyway. And I guess I'll enjoy sitting over Christmas and chilling out and playing some of it.
If it's out by then.
It should be.
So
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. Retro Hamer was first in there on hearing the prize alarm. And he put shocking scenes in. So, Retro Hamer, take your pick of the prizes from retrogamingroundup.com/prizes. Apart from the Sensible book, that's already gone. And
you're not getting a brick either.
No, you're not getting a brick. And you can add the Atari Flashback too. So, let us know what you want. Drop us an email, something in Discord, post in the forums, whatever, and we will get a prize out to you.
So I've got one here, which, for once, it's not me sending in articles for the Dreamcast Junkyard. It is us versus them. And this is a rare Dreamcast aquarium sort of simulator that was, if you've not heard of, they brought out for use in sort of hotels and like golf clubs and various sort of fancy places. Bruno Bonnell, who some of you may recognise from Infogrames games, gave over a load of hardware to the Musée Bolo, and in some of this hardware was part of the software for this aquarium software, and the Musée Bolo has now sort of got it up and running again. They're doing sort of work to it to make it work nicely in emulators, and they're kind of keeping it restored and going to plan to show it at museums and things of this kind of quite nice looking Dreamcast powered aquarium. There's a nice little article there.
It was. I had a look at that. It's an interesting read. I would recommend it, definitely. It's very Japanese.
Konnichiwa.
Does anyone have any info about the Intellivision launch at E3? I know they were there with the Amico. Does anyone have any follow-up on it? I didn't catch up with E3 personally.
So, yes. I think, initially when they announced the Amico and everything, they didn't have enough really in place to talk about it yet. I think we've reached that point. So I've hit up Tommy and Nermix, and hope to hear from them soon. And we'll get them on the show, and we will bring the content to you, and we'll talk about it with the guys that are making it.
Okay, sounds good. A couple of TV-related ones. No doubt you will have heard of Blake Seven if you're listening to this. The actor, Paul Darrow, has passed away this last month. And he's been in a couple of Terry Pratchett adaptations as well, lots of other things. He's a well-known actor over many years. Sadly died at the age of 78. And also Netflix making an animated Magic the Gathering series. Not something I would be terribly interested in. I didn't like was it Castlevania they did?
I kind of like the Castlevania.
I thought it was good.
I'm cautiously interested in this. I have played Magic back when it first came out, early 90s. I played it. It was something we did a lot in the Army, just it was a good game, very portable, entertaining, sort of like in a very abbreviated setup to play like a D&D type game. One of my good friends, in fact, down in Toulouse, we were playing it sitting around his kitchen table. So I'm by no means an expert, by no means good, but it's good. It's a great game. So could something be done amazing out of it? Yes. Could it be a shit thing cashing in on notoriety? It certainly could be. So
I think it'd be kind of fun if it was like the old D&D cartoon where you had a kind of an out of world, portion and an actually in-world portion. So you had a mixture. It's not just all about the Magic the Gathering lore, which I have no idea about, but you've got like this kind of, it starts off with kids in the playground fighting over like the fact that someone should have given them up a rare card as a prize, and they're not taking it, and they get into a scrap and then get sort of sucked into the game, as it were, and things happen. And they sort of travel back and forth between the two dimensions, but I doubt that will happen. It would just be probably about the general lore of Magic the Gathering itself. But I don't know how a card game has a particular lore. I can see, you've got like Warcraft and, things like that, RPGs, how that translates into, there's an overall world arc and story to it, and like Castlevania, but a card game where you've got characters, each little character may have a bit of lore to itself over, this guy's strong because he's blah, 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 and he was the priest of this or whatever, but I don't ever feel like there's a whole sort of world behind it all, but we'll see.
I've got a weekend away in a couple of weeks, and I'm about to introduce a whole load of people to Cards Against Humanity.
Excellent.
We've been playing Cards Against Muggles quite a bit, which is the same thing but Harry Potter themed, and the amount of people that have come over to us in the pub as they're leaving and just been like, were you talking about Dumbledore wanking? We're like, yeah, yes, we were.
Yeah.
Well then. I have been. I've never watched the Harry Potter stuff. I've never read the books. It was in my generation. But I do love all the memes out there where they'll have like let's say like waiter and then JK, it'd be like waiter, hi, welcome to our restaurant. Would you like to order an appetizer? JK, Dumbledore goes both ways. It's like,
Yeah.
and the waiter's like, stop it. What do you want to drink?
By the way, Ron's gay.
Yeah.
One here from Racket Boy. It's an article on We Like Gun Shooters, on rail shooters. And I've played quite a few of these. The House of the Dead Overkill. You'll see it in the live chat pretty soon. The Resident Evil, Umbrella Chronicles, and Darkside Chronicles. I've got the Umbrella one. I think that was the first one. That was all right. Not great, but it was okay.
I didn't like the QTE's sort of side of it. It always felt a bit clumsy to me, that one.
Yeah, a little bit. Dead Space Extraction.
That's good.
Ghost Squad.
That's very good. That's fucking amazing.
Amazing, you say. I'll scroll back to it.
Amazing. Well worth borrowing or stealing or whatever you want to do.
Or paying £3.50 for it these days, probably.
Probably.
Gunblade New York and LA.
That's a weird one because it's ported from an arcade game, but you've got basically there's no reload. You've just got infinite hold down the trigger, a machine gun, and it just constantly fires. So there's almost like no skill to it. It's very weird, and my mate gave it to me when he was working at Sega, and yeah, it's fun to sit and go through, but it definitely doesn't hold up to House of the Dead and Ghost Squad.
Yeah. Gunslingers, Western Heroes. Not played that one.
Not one I've played yet.
Nerf and Strike. Nerf and Strike. No,
nope.
Not played that. Link's Crossbow Training. I did play that and got the old crossbow add-on with it. The next one I did play a hell of a lot on. Medal of Honor Heroes 2. That had a great online. I played a little bit of the single player, which was just standard Wii first-person shooter type stuff. But the online was brilliant when the servers were live, that is. There was always a good bunch of servers, and there was always one that just had grenades and sniper rifles available. And it was set on, I think it was called the port or the harbour, that level. And the level was just so well designed. There was no one place you could just sit and hide without someone being able to see you from somewhere. So even though you were sniping, you were always kind of visible from somewhere. So you had to keep moving, fire off a few shots, and keep moving. It really was good. Played that a lot at the time. There are a couple more there you can go through and find and read the article for yourself. I wouldn't advise you buy Mad Dog McCree, though, because that was a pile of shite.
But yeah, lots of... I really like the revival of the light gun shooter that the Wii brought to us. I remember, you've come to my house and played. We've had an evening playing on Wii light guns and things like that.
Yeah.
It was really good. It's a shame that's all sort of gone away now. Probably not going to return. Apart from, I suppose the VR's taken over. There's a lot of that kind of thing in VR. So like Space Pirate Trainer and things like that. That seems to be where that genre of game has gone.
I still haven't even gotten a VR set up. I looked at the PlayStation VR and what's available, and I'm like, just wait for PS5, see what they do differently, Kind of the unending, undelivered promise.
Yeah.
Got one here from Mike James. GameStop quarterlies show slumping sales. Collectibles and new Switch hardware sales are up, but nearly everything else is down. Well, let me explain something to you. When you go into GameStop and all they have are collectibles and such cardboard crap, you turn around and leave. I just don't, The only reason I have to go through a GameStop, let's say, like, I pick up a PS4 and there's 2 years of games out for it, which was the case. And I can hop on eBay and I can find tons of great games for under $20 of free shipping. They're usually whatever I'm looking for is there. if I happen to stop by GameStop, like let's say I literally am going to drop off my car for its annual state inspection, and there is a GameStop in the same parking lot as the place, which is the case. I'll walk in there, look around, see, oh, do they have anything I don't have? I'll buy this, this, and this, right? Other than that, it's on Amazon. I'll just, if it's a new game, I kind of take a look ahead at what's coming out for the PS4, what's coming out for the Xbox One X, what's coming out for, Switch. And when I do find a game that's interesting, it's almost always several months apart. So I put it on pre-order, and it just shows up like magic in my mailbox. I'm not going to drive into town just to walk into a brick and mortar and buy it. So the only real use I would have for going to GameStop is if I happen to pretty much already be there for some other reason, and I walk in and I buy some games. I'm not going to buy amiibos. I'm not going to buy little bobblehead dolls. I don't buy that shit, So yeah, it's if they only stock things that I have no interest in, I wouldn't be buying. So that's kind of that. Got another one right underneath that though that I wanted to hit.
Guns.
Mike and I were talking about this.
We were.
It was a big anti-tank rifle. Now this was World War I when tanks were a new thing, and they had maybe a half inch to an inch of steel armor, and you wanted to punch through that and get to the soft, chewy center on the inside. What are you going to do? You're going to build a rifle. It looks like an ordinary rifle. It's just 3 times as big. So the link will be there in the show notes. These sort of things. It was a stopgap measure because they didn't really have, high explosives, rocketry, where you could have a man-portable single-shot rocket, a reloadable rocket that would be really effective. That came in World War II. So the only thing they could really do is just make a really, really, really big rifle, which they did.
Is that the channel you were talking about as well?
What's that?
Is that the same channel you were talking about? You said there's a channel.
No, this is a different one, but I've seen it. It's a pretty familiar one. So one other thing here, just since I had it pulled up and I want to bring it out, I've been looking at Hypercan kind of because they're always coming up with new stuff, and they have made a new N64 console. And one of the questions was, hey, would it have HDMI? Yes, it does. I think they've finally gotten away from doing the composite video, realizing that is a dead end and not even included on many new TVs. They have to go HDMI, and they're finally doing it. The other question is, does it have the memory expansion option? Well, it's done through emulation, so certainly I can't imagine it not. Would I buy one? Probably not. I didn't like the N64 when it came out. I didn't care for most of the games. I don't think I'd buy a modern version of it when my original one isn't even connected to power. It's just on the shelf because I don't really play those games.
Sure, this was sent in by Gareth Hamer, and one was I was going to get onto. And I'd seen
well, you
this...
still can.
Well, yeah, I'd seen it pre-E3. I'd seen some scuttlebutt about it. My first thing was, is it going to be Hyperkin doing the way they used to, they did all the SNES stuff early on and the NES stuff where it had gone out of the patent had expired and they making their own, clone chips for it, or where they're going to just go the emulation route again. And they seem to have gone the emulation route, which is a bit of a shame because I think N64 emulation can still be a bit hit or miss. If they'd have come out with a sort of, more of a glop top sort of chip clone version of it, it may be a bit more interesting. I guess that would have been harder then to perhaps do the full HDMI pipeline on it. So it probably is just easier these days to just stick an ARM chip in and some emulation software. So I don't know. I still think it's, yeah. I mean, I keep trying to resurrect my N64. I've rebuilt controllers. I've got a really nice video transcoder to take, get the best job I can out of S-Video that you get from a PAL N64. And it's just the games aren't that great. Even Zelda 64 Ocarina, I don't think that's anywhere near what the hype it deserves. So yeah, I'd not spend any great deal of money on it. But then I've got I've still got an N64 and a big, massive shoebox full of very cheap N64 games I've bought to go through. So there's nothing really a new console's going to benefit me.
And speaking of new consoles, Random sent this one in. Chris Lethko sent it in. Retro Al sent it in. Brian sent it in. Just scrolling down, see if there's any more. Can't see any more. Just looking down quickly. Konami announces the TurboGrafx 16 Mini. Depending on region, you'll get a different lineup of games, and it will be called either the TurboGrafx or the PC Engine.
Or the core graphics.
Yes, or the core graphics.
Which is an odd one for Europe, because I think we still got a TurboGrafx in PAL and not the core graphics. So that seems strange.
Yeah.
But
Konami suddenly apparently realised that they owned all the licensing for this and thought, oh, we should maybe put this out. So the 6 titles so far announced for North America and Europe. R-Type, Wise Book 1 and 2, New Adventure Island, Ninja Spirit, Alien Crush, Dungeon Explorer. And in Japan, Bonk's Adventure, Dracula X, The Kung Fu / China Warrior, Wise 1 and 2, Superstar Soldier, and Dungeon Explorer. I believe it will also support CD games.
Yes, Japan's announced Dracula X, Rondo of Blood, which is a CD game. So they're clearly open to just having CD-based ROMs on there, which is interesting. Perhaps.
I could see myself getting the overseas version. Kind of like, when I got the Mini, I got the Famicom Mini, and just because it's really cool, and it's a good looking format. I could see getting the overseas version of this one.
What's weird about it is, I mean, I've just seen what sort of press photos floated out, but someone was holding like a PC Engine Mini, and it's not really that much smaller than an actual PC Engine, because that's not that small in the first place. So it probably could be smaller, because it's still not even as small as, like, say, the PS TV. So yeah, it's quite odd that it's only kind of, I don't know, 85% the size of an actual PC Engine. So that's weird. But to most people, probably the size of a PC Engine seems like a tiny console. Really, when you look at it, it's it's a fraction of the size of a SNES or a NES. So yeah.
Maybe.
How big do the minis need to be?
Yeah.
So one here that was sent in by a couple of people, and certainly it's been a topic of discussion. It's not retro, but I mean, hell, it's a retro franchise. So there's a new sequel coming out to Breath of the Wild. And I thought Breath of the Wild was just a wonderful game. I went back recently and replayed it. It had been long enough since I played it that things were, pretty fresh again. But yeah, I knew more about what to start doing from the beginning and all. So it was a very enjoyable playthrough. I don't know how soon I'll ever do that again. But yeah, I personally am looking forward to this. What about you guys?
Yeah, Breath of the Wild was pretty much the first game that Amber had really, really got addicted to. She'd always sort of played a few games, here and there, but never really stuck on them. And then Breath of the Wild, just, I think the freedom of it, and, she wanted to not have to worry about potential dangerous combat. She could just avoid it and do all sorts of other things. So it, suited her down to the ground. She ended up, I played the hell out of it for the first few weeks, and then she sort of cottoned onto it and then rapidly overtook my playtime. And it took me a while to catch up to where she'd got to. It's a really fantastic Zelda game. I really enjoyed it. A lot of my time I spent just exploring like the mountainous regions of the UK, and so just going out and wandering around Hyrule, climbing the mountains and seeing what was around there was kind of very sort of similar to that for me, I think. Mike's not played it. Mike's game. Mike won't buy a Switch or a Wii U.
No, I don't see me buying a Switch, so it's not for me.
Well, the Switch is pretty good. The Wii U, it was total shit. So other things coming out that we should talk about. The Atari VCS pre-order is announced. And not only have they announced it again, they remember when they were about to do this and then it just went away all of a sudden.
Yeah.
How many more times can they do this?
To
right?
make it better.
Yeah. So pretty much they say they're going to have the VCS 400 and VCS 800. Uh, not even sure about that. It's supposed to have an online ecosystem, and nobody cares. I mean, there's no details about what this online ecosystem is going to be. And I laid it out. I laid out the case. I'll lay it out again very briefly. I think that if you were to have, oh, that's the best way to put it. If you were to have what I call the, what if Atari never went away? You know, what if Atari never went away? I mean, what if the VCS had remained in production? And I think I would certainly be a player. I would buy one. Yeah, just delivering the idea that the Atari VCS never went away. I'm down for that. I want to see what if Atari had remained in business, and just like I could go out and buy a PS4, an Xbox, I could go out and buy, or a Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch can trace its heritage back to the NES. What if there was the Atari equivalent of the Switch, where I could buy the new version of a console as if they had never gone away for 20 years in the middle? I just have zero faith that's going to be what they deliver. I have no interest in this. There's just nothing there for me. They haven't demonstrated anything. So it looks like it's going to be just an overpriced PC. It's probably going to be mediocre at best. And I guarantee you, their software is not going to be locked down very well. People will be running this off of an SD card on some random ass cheap, $80 PC off of Amazon, and this will go nowhere and go away. That's my bet.
What? So, yeah, I mean, what amazed me with the Atari stuff is that, like Mike says, like yet again, there's another announcement. They're launching this console again, but there's still no word on actual games. And like the whole thing, the whole attraction of a new console is, what is the software lineup? Do I want to buy it day one? I don't know. Let's see what games it offers me. Is it something worthwhile buying? And there's just still nothing at all.
Yep, it's a big giant nothing.
Something else that might turn out to be a big giant nothing is Google Stadia. They announced the pricing, $119 pounds. Sorry, if you want to be in at launch, you need a super duper Chromecast, and you get the controller.
Well, they give you the Chromecast for that money.
Yes, you get the Chromecast and the controller, and there's a chart here. The link will be in the show notes of what sort of performance you can expect on your internet connection. They kind of break it down, ranging from 4K at 60 frames per second with 5.1 surround, down to 720p at 60 frames a second in stereo. So we shall wait and see on...
Even less interest in that.
Google Stadia. Another one, developers are suing Apple because of their 30% charge on every app or game that developers make. So that will go away for a little while, then it'll come back, and then we'll see what happens. But I expect the same may start to happen with the Google Store as well. So keep your ear to the ground.
I've got one here from Keith Haddad. I don't know about you guys, but he says it's an ad-supported pinball movie on YouTube. Unfortunately for me, it is not available in my country.
Yeah, I got that as well. Scott, is it available in your country?
Don't know.
Do I need to VPN this shit? Is that the question? That's the question.
I wonder what country Keith's in. I think he's in the States.
It's called Special When Lit, which is kind of my...
I've got a film called Special When Lit. I'm sure I have. Is it the same one or a new one?
Let's do a bit of investigation, shall we?
Let's have a quick look. Videos.
2009 on IMDb.
Yeah, I've seen it then. I've got it. It's good.
Oh yeah, that it took me when you read the date. I was like, well, yeah, that's an oldie but goodie.
Yeah. Yeah, I would recommend you watch it if it's available in your country, which may or may not be the case.
It also appears to be a pinball club in the UK with 25 pinball machines, and it's open to the public every Friday evening. All machines are free to play after paying the entrance fee. Where is this? This is in Salisbury.
Some people might say Salisbury.
That's probably it, yeah.
Ubisoft announces PC game subscription service called Uplay Plus. You can read that at your leisure.
Also compatible with Stadia, but...
Is it? So you'd use your Stadia controller to play Ubisoft games?
Well, yeah, you can play them on Stadia, so you can play it without the Stadia Pro, so you can play it on the free tier, just not in 4K. So just for $15 a month, you can play all the Ubisoft catalogue, but that depends on if you're the kind of person, I guess, that buys 4 Ubisoft games a year at full price, then it makes sense. If not, probably not.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of an odd one.
So we've got a prize winner there. Chris Lethco was the first one with the phrase that pays, which is shocking scenes. So, Chris, head over to retrogamingroundup.com/prizes and let us know what prize you want.
As long as it's not the Sensible Software book.
Yeah, or the Atari Flashback 2, which Retro Hamer has claimed. Do you know anything about Play-to-Go, Random?
That is what I sent in, which P-Cube sent to me. I think it's basically sort of trying to piggyback a bit off the fact that Mario Maker 2 is coming out soon. And it's a platform, basically a platform game maker that's going to be out on Steam and Nintendo Switch. So kind of similar to your old school, make a series of games that you used to get. You could make a platform game with it fairly easily. It looks like there's a bunch of different sort of tile sets emulating Apple II, C64, Game Boy, SNES, that kind of thing, and it'll apply that to, you can design a level and then you can put whatever theme you want on it and it will still work kind of the way in Mario Maker you can choose between Mario 1, Mario 3, Super Mario World, and it keeps the same design but just changes the tile set. Don't know how good it is, but maybe worth keeping an eye on. See if there's a community building around it and seeing if there's anything good coming out of it. If you don't want to buy Mario Maker 2, which I'm looking forward to playing at the end of the week.
Chris Lethco would like the Mega Gear Omnibus. I'm presuming that's one you've got, Random.
Metal Gear Solid Omnibus, yep.
Okay.
Send me a mail or a bit of Discord PM or whatever, and with an address if I don't already have it, and I'll get that out.
So here's one I don't believe.
While I'm on the subject of sending out prizes, I've got a thing in the back of my mind that I've still not sent someone's prize out. So if you're listening to this and you're owed a prize, legitimately, I'll know if you're lying. Just get in touch and poke me again before I turn into SoCal and wait 8 months to send things out.
So here's one I don't quite believe. Nintendo pledges continued support for the 3DS. Despite having no new games to announce at E3, Nintendo of America President Doug Bowser responded to a direct question about the fate of the 3DS and admitted that Nintendo had no games to announce at the show, but claimed that the absence of titles was down to a calculated decision to focus on the Switch. So we shall wait and see, but I don't know.
Which ironically also has a shocking lack of titles.
Yeah.
And you'd focus on the Switch if you were maybe rumoured to be bringing out a smaller Switch, which is a bit more portable and handheld focused, which you could argue may replace the 3DS. And so focusing on that, you're making one game for your handheld system and your home system.
Yeah.
But, we'll see. I've not heard any rumblings, secret or otherwise, of any replacement for the 3DS. But then I've also seen no evidence yet of this advanced Switch, other than this last week, there was a peripheral manufacturer that supposedly had some renders of a new case for a Switch Mini, but how true they are remains to be seen. The only thing I know of, hard facts, is the PS5 and the Xbox Scarlet. So, who knows?
You sent one in there, Random. I think we covered it last month, unless it's an updated story about the Evercade, which was the handheld cartridge-based thing.
Have I lost everyone?
No. Not lost me. Are you there? Are you there, Random?
Random, come in, Random.
Come in, Sheffield. Come in, Sheffield.
Come in, Manchester and Virginia.
I hope nothing's messed up, because my Skype is as frozen as the North Pole right now.
Is it?
It has been since 1 minute after we started.
Well, I can still hear you. I can hear Random. Can you hear us, Random?
Mike, while you sort that, I have to step out for a hot second. I will be right back.
Okay. Let's jump on here. Let's tell you what we'll do. We can play a little bit of music for everyone, because Random's messaging me. Let's see what happens.
What?
Are you back?
What?
Are you back?
I
can hear him. He's got an
I've
intruder.
heard lots of carrying on.
He has an intruder. We shall return. So we've got just a few news items left to go. A pretty interesting one that quite a few people sent in as well. So I shall get to that in 1 second. While Random is otherwise engaged. And while Scott has stepped out for something or other. I don't know how I close that window on Skype now. There we go. Shall we pick one in the meantime, or should we wait? I think we'll wait for them. Is he back? Are you back, Random? Can you hear me, Random? Where have you gone?
Hello, you're very quiet, Michael.
I've not done anything. I haven't touched anything. What have you done?
What the fuck, then? Let me quit and come back.
Okay, you quit and I'll add you back. And once again, I'll play the people a little tune. Are you there, Random?
I am here.
There he is. He's having a little dance. Bless him.
What had happened is, not only had I lost you earlier, I then turned around to talk to Amber and also managed to half pull the cable out of my headphones, it turns out.
Oops.
Which is why I could only hear you in one ear.
Well,
where were we?
Oh, all the gang are back together. So I wanted to wait for you for this one. It was sent in by me. It was sent in by Sean Stevenson. It was sent in by Chris Lethco. And who else mentioned it in chat? That guy from Legendary Axe, I think, mentioned it in chat. Or maybe Chris Lethco, can't remember. It is the Mega SD cartridge. I assume you have all seen this pop across your news feeds. And it's really interesting. It is a cartridge that plugs into your Mega Drive, Genesis, whatever you want to call it. And it supports Master System, it supports Mega CD games, and it supports 32X games. It's a consumer product that contains an FPGA. What do you think about that?
I can't believe once the floodgates were opened, boy, everybody's doing that these days.
All it needed was for one brave soldier to do it first before anybody else, and then it was done. Now, it's not the cheapest thing in the world, €232, so you're looking over $200. I'm not sure how it converts.
Well, if there's one thing we know, it's the FPGAs can dramatically drive up the price of a product.
They certainly can. They certainly can. So, are we excited about this?
Yeah, it's an obvious thing to make. You know, you take an FPGA, it can do the processing, you can emulate the additional hardware. Why wouldn't you? Yeah, it's to me, it's a very obvious step that should have been done, and now it is.
But then, how much is the what the fuck are they called? The new FPGA Mega Drive that came out. You know, the one they've done the snares, and they used to do.
The analog
SG, the Mega Drive one. That can do Sega CD as well, and I'm pretty sure that's only about this price for an actual whole console, which also then has HDMI out and tunable audio stuff, so you don't have to worry about whether your console's got the good audio chips. You can basically emulate any of the audio chips by tweaking bits and pieces. So that would, and that just plays ROMs off an SD card with a jailbreak. So that
if you're choosing between the two, okay, a whole console. But let's say you've got the original console and you want to use that original hardware. This is a great option. There's people for both.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting device. If you're a real retro head, you can probably pick up all of that hardware for less than this. 32X, the Mega CD, the Genesis. You could probably get that for less than the price of this, but then you've got to get the games on top, I suppose, which you should be doing anyway, listeners.
Well, obviously. So I was going to segue from our talk of handheld Nintendo consoles, and it kind of neatly joins in with the talk of FPGA consoles and things. And it's one that I forwarded in with the subject line "'cause cartridges," and it was one that I got sent as on a PR blast this week, which was the Evercade handheld console, where they've got a unique cartridge design that they're basically giving you ROM packs to run on this handheld emulator. And at no point in any of it do I appear to be able to find anything about the company that's behind it. All I can find is I've managed to get to an official games list now, and there's an Atari Pack 1 and an Atari Pack 2 and a Data East pack and an Interplay pack. But what caught my attention was the email was all very much like SoCal-like speak of like, oh, we've courted these publishers, these developers, we've got them interested, and they're going to release their back catalogue with us on the stuff, but they actually appear to have got to the negotiation stage rather than just sending them an email. I don't know whether
which is the definition of being in talks.
Well, yes,
It is.
of course. You're talking to them. What more do you need? The console itself is going to be $59.99 UK, €69.99, $79.99, and cartridges are going to be $14.99 UK and $19.99. Which I don't know. It just feels a bit. There's a number of handhelds like this. It kind of feels like one of those PSP style things you'd get off AliExpress that you just chuck a bunch of ROMs onto an SD card. It's just like that, but with a business model where they're trying to sort of legitimize you pay, guilting you into paying for the ROMs on these cartridges. So, I don't know.
I don't think it'll go very far. I think it'll sell a few and then disappear.
The interesting thing is it's got a 16:9 screen that everything's then letterboxed into 4:3 on, which seems like a waste of time.
Yeah. Stepping away from gaming for a second, Andrew Hannay sent us a couple, the second of which was about the TV show Chernobyl, whichever you like. Kind of retro as it did happen in the 80s. You must watch the HBO/Sky miniseries. Very, gripping and just plain scary. Admittedly, a little bit of artistic license was used to add some dramatic effect, but the set is just amazing, and I've never seen anything as so accurate, props-wise, for the time period it was set in. Cheers, Andrew. The last episode, as the kids say these days, dropped while Scott was here, and so we watched the final episode together while drinking some Old Grandad, I do believe. I really enjoyed the series. It was good. And it was fun to watch the last one with Scott and his knowledge of nukes as well. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. I would recommend you watch it.
It was a great series, man. I'm telling you, when it opens up, you're watching it, and they captured everything just so perfectly. I mean, just the whole Soviet world, like they showed, we've all seen pictures of what the place looked like, 20, 30 years later, but to show what it looked like in its heyday of, sort of clean, fresh paint and, people running around doing people things during the course of their day. And it just gave you a really interesting picture too of the, they kept doing very deliberate shots to show the proximity of, like, say, the village to the power plant, right? And it would have like a news report of, okay, milk is unsafe to drink in Switzerland and Finland now, and they detected all these contaminants, right? And then they'll back up and show the plant within, a 10-minute drive of the town that isn't evacuated. So just some really neat stuff. And, as far as like how reactors work and, the risks and hazards, it wasn't anything like when you watch Gravity. If you know about spaceflight, you just get mad because of how inaccurate and horribly presented it is. But, I don't work day to day in a nuclear reactor, but I know how they work. There's nothing there that just made me want to throw shit at the TV. It was a dramatic series, and it was meant to be, not a technical documentary. But man, was it really well done. I was very impressed with it. So if you haven't seen Chernobyl yet, definitely give it a watch.
Yeah, we enjoyed it, and I particularly also enjoyed the Russian government sort of follow-up to it and its success, where they pledged to make their own series that actually tells the truth about how the Americans sabotaged the power plant and caused the meltdown.
Sure they did.
Is that for real? I mean, was that actually said?
From what I read, yeah. I don't know how accurate what I've read, because it could all be bits, lots of messing about. But it seems
like a troll, because ultimately, once the Soviet Union fell, the Russians, to their credit, have done a pretty credible job about going back and sort of disclosing some of the shenanigans. And they fessed up to a lot of things because it's kind of no longer them. They're blaming this other group. But they've done some pretty factual presentations. And I mean, it's very easy with the Russians for them to go high and left real quick. But
I mean,
I would be surprised if they did something like that.
the BBC these days aren't necessarily too trustworthy, but they do have on their website a news piece that's just titled "Russia to make its own show about Chernobyl that implicates the US." So they're backing it up as well.
Yeah, Retro Hamer in chat says they want to do their own version. Chris Lethgo says, I heard the science behind the show was complete BS. Any truth to that?
I would be hesitant to say complete BS. It's an abridged version. It's, I mean, when you watch like the smoke streaming out of the reactor, right? And it's just showering, isotopes and contaminated, everything that they dumped in there to burn. It was pretty darn accurate. I would say don't focus on the minutia of how that particular model of reactor behaves under those conditions. Focus maybe a little bit more on the overall the story they're trying to tell. This thing exploded. It had an exposed remnants of a core. It was, dumping tremendous amounts of, fallout all over, downwind Europe. So,
I remember stuff getting to like Wales and Shetland. And
yeah, we couldn't eat lamb.
Places like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the science of it is basically correct. How it got too hot and how it exploded. That's all pretty factual. The stuff that they used license for was like, from what I've read, it would have been almost invisible vapor, if not white sort of steam coming out rather than the thick black plumes. But that's, dramatic effect. You can't show invisible vapor escaping, on TV. You've got to show a black plume kind of thing. But otherwise, I think the science of it was pretty...
tons of stuff burning. I mean,
yeah.
At which phase of it? So somebody could arguably go, well, this phase of it, it was no longer emitting visible. But okay, yeah, we get that. That's not really the point,
Yeah.
Overall, I give them a lot of credit.
Yeah. There's a nice GIF there for you wrestling fans. If you're not a wrestling fan already, you might become one. In the meantime, Andrew Hannay's other email was about the arcade one-up machine, the Star Wars one in particular. That they announced at E3. It plays all 3 games. The original arcade version, The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I can show you that on the live stream. There it is. There's a picture of the cab there. A couple of people sent that. I think Random sent that one in as well.
Yeah. So yeah, to start with, I sort of cottoned onto that story because of there's a Turtles cabinet and they've got Turtles in Time and whatever the other one is. But then they've also got Marvel Superheroes, the Capcom Fighter, and they've got a couple of other X-Men games on there. But then, I sort of, was reading about them and they're sort of focusing on them. And you scroll down, it's like, oh yeah, and they're doing a replica of the Star Wars cabinet with the flight yoke and everything. You're like, what? Surely that would be the headline news in that section, but
another handheld here that I will bring up on screen from Sean Stevenson. It is the Game Shell. Let's see what Sean has to say. Looks like an interesting piece of kit. I doubt it will take off, but pretty cool nonetheless. And it is kind of a Game Shell, kind of a Game Boy design, sorry. It's open source, portable, modular, from a company called Clockwork. It's powered by a quad-core Cortex A7 processor and a gig of DDR3 RAM. You get Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It's designed to be usable for programming games or playing games and so much more. Not sure how much more you need, but $160
There's quite a few
on
little
Amazon.
ones like this out there on the market. There's even a guy at Expo that had a whole table of the new, Game Boy shelled rebuilds and refurbs with new screens, and I'm glad to see all that happening.
Yeah. I don't feel the need to pick them all up. I think if you pick one up and it's pretty decent, you may as well stick with it. Another one from Sean here. Blade Runner is coming to Scum VM. a most excellent game and a most excellent platform. I do like Scum games. Never played Blade Runner, though. The 1997 adventure game that meticulously recreated the film's universe has become increasingly difficult to play on modern PCs, don't they all? In 2003, the game's source code was lost, and it seemed like Blade Runner would never get the facelift that other retro games have received. Now it appears Blade Runner's fate might be changing because Scum is making it playable again. And of course, they don't need the source code to do that. So I'm not a huge Blade Runner fan. It's a good film. I wouldn't say it's a great film. I think it's overrated, but I would definitely play the game.
It is, Michael?
Pardon?
What kind of film would you say it is?
Oh, it's a good film. Who did we make say that? Oh, yeah, we should mention Gordon and Kieran. When we were at Revival, we hung out with Gordon Murray and his friend Kieran. Gordon, you'll know from the show in the past. He was making the game Machu Picchu Mike. I chastise him because it's not finished yet, but he's been a busy boy. He's got a new job. But he is going to go back to it, and by his own admission, we'll probably just rewrite the whole thing again. But it was good to hang out with Gordon, and we kept making him say film. But
he does it just right.
We also made him say filming, and he said filming. He didn't say filming, which was a complete shock. I think he's just saying film for effect.
Yeah.
No, because that was off the cuff when he said that. And we're like, hey, wait. Can you back up just 1 second? What was that you said? And he tried to film. He tried to not say it.
Yeah. There's a fan-made game, Mario Royale, that is basically Super Mario, was it Brothers or World? I think it was Brothers.
Brothers.
Yeah, Super Mario Brothers that supported 75 players online at any one time. You can't collide with them, but you can hit them with shells and things like that to kill each other. And I think the first 3 to reach the end of the level win, something like that. Predictably, Nintendo sent them a cease and desist. So the game is being continued, but it's now called Infringio Royale.
Nice.
Yeah, and they're changing all the graphical tile sets and stuff. So it looks a bit ropey at the moment, where they've just kind of replaced it with black, like basically solid browns and things like that. But yeah, it was one that I'd forgotten to submit when it first came out, knowing that it would go down very quickly anyway. So I put it in Discord. But yeah, now it's obviously he anticipated it being cease and desisted and had a plan for resurrecting it somehow else anyway.
Retro
I just
Hamer.
don't understand. Like these things, these are fan tributes, right? It's not going to. At no point is this game existing going to cut into Nintendo's bottom line.
No.
Just stop making enemies. I know they have to protect their copyright, but they can protect their copyright by suing, say, a company that releases Nintendo shirts that isn't licensed. Great, do that. But the little guy making a tribute game, just leave him the hell alone.
At worst, this is going to increase interest in like Mario Maker 2, which is out this month. This is not going to. People aren't going to buy the, play this and not buy Mario Maker 2 because it's not got a battle royale mode in it. It's just not going to happen.
No,
couldn't agree more.
Not going to happen. Something else that may or may not have happened. NASA hacked with a Raspberry Pi. I didn't read too much on this, but apparently someone's had access, been lurking on their network somehow, and went undetected. Let's see if it says here what they did. They stole about 500 meg of data from one of the major mission systems. They used a Pi to gain access to the JPL network, then took advantage of weaknesses in the network to remain undetected for 10 months, stealing 23 files in the process. That's not a great return. But 2 of the files contained information on international traffic in arms regulations, which controls the transfer
Which is total horseshit. ITAR is just meaning it's, U.S. proprietary derived. stuff. There's nothing. ITAR is just a generic label. It doesn't mean that all it's munitions or arms related. Although they generically deem all space assets to be defense critical, this is a huge nothing burger. It's absolutely nothing here is of value. That you could steal a ton of mission data on any satellite or probe or whatever, right? What you're going to get is essentially tremendous, several hundred to several thousand data points and their values. You're going to see exciting information such as what's the temp of thermistor A, thermistor B, thermistor C, thermistor D1, thermistor D2, thermistor G, all that. You're going to get to see temperatures, pressures, XYZ. You're going to get to see roll, pitch, yaw. You might even get to see a thruster turn on. It's nothing there of interest or usefulness in this context. It's like, so what? It would be like having a log of the input between your PS4 controller and the PS4. It's that interesting. There's nothing there of consequence. And what you use to do it, I mean, the Pi runs Linux. It's a great contained Linux node, and you don't need a lot of processing power to do network intrusion. You just need, well, a connection on the network. So, not big of a deal.
Nez for Life has sent us an email with some stuff that he'd posted in Discord, one of which was the Raspberry Pi 4 release, which we've talked about. The other one, which is he's discovered an undumped version of Space Invaders and submitted it to MAME. He says it's a modified version of Space Invaders by Zenitone Microsec, which is a bootleg, and the splash screen has been changed to promote the UK distributor Ruffler and Deeth. It's the second game he's submitted to MAME, and it was found he bought a Space Invaders cab a year ago, but hadn't tried to fix it. When he did, the ROMs were looking bad, so he sent them off to a friend to validate. And when they dumped them, they found this alternative bootleg Space Invaders ROM. So that's pretty cool.
More space
That's
stuff.
Really cool.
Really cool. Limited run games. Limited run games are releasing physical NES and Game Boy cartridges of the game Star Wars, if you are so inclined. During E3, they announced it. Doesn't say how many they're going to make. Limited quantities of Star Wars Bounty Hunter will also go live. Doesn't say how many copies of this that they're doing, but if you want to pick
they're
up...
about 20 to 50,000 that limited run do, but that's usually like PS Vita, PS4 sort of Switch releases. I don't know about physical NES and Game Boy releases. It's kind of cool if they come in those blister packs that they have sort of mocked up. That's quite a nice little package. But whether it's worth spending the money on, the games aren't terribly the best games in the world. They're very cheap to buy the actual original cartridges. I found so. Yeah.
So we have just one left, and I will bring that up on the stream for you. It is inappropriate cross-stitching. Now, some of these look genuine. Some of them may be a little Photoshop, but what made me laugh, and I might have been drinking at the time when I found this, is the amount of time someone puts into a cross-stitch project, and I can just envisage them all the while they're doing it, just giggling to themselves as the project comes to life. So they look amusing when they're finished, but I could just see the person who was doing it just giggling to themselves as they do so. So a nice little light-hearted one to finish on there.
I think it's funny. I mean, would I buy one? No. Would I display one? No. But I mean, it's nice to know that somebody that's into such a a straight-laced hobby would do something funny like that. Because let's face it, your average cross-stitcher isn't usually going to be slinging jokes like that, right?
No. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Which brings us to the end of live news, and we thought we might still be around when Sparklepuss emerged, but we seem to be done.
Well, what did we? I know there's something we missed that we were going to talk about, and damned if I can remember what it is, Michael.
Give me some point of reference. Or is that what you're struggling with?
I don't know. There's just something I recall. I think it was our arcade club. Me and you and Dave were saying, "Oh yeah, we got to remember this for news," and I'm drawing a blank. When we think of it,
were we sitting chatting to Sean Holly from the 10pence Arcade podcast at the time?
Many thanks to while we're on that, many thanks to Sean and buying me a beer for our hard work on the podcast. Much appreciated.
Yes, thank you, Sean. Indeed,
everyone should listen to the 10pence Arcade podcast.
They should indeed, and not just because of Sean. It's a good podcast. I mean, incidentally, Sean just happens to be on it.
In spite of Sean.
It's a good podcast.
But I can't remember what we were going to talk about.
Well, we'll sort it out one day.
We need to go to Arcade Club in Leeds, which opened this month, which wasn't in the news. I think it was, the start of this month. Probably the week.
It was the end of May, last weekend in
Manchester.
May. It was the last weekend in May, I think it opened. But yeah, we should go over there. They had a fairly quiet opening day, I think, and then they had a very busy weekend, and a lot of the staff from Bury were over there. They were short-staffed when we were in Bury.
I know one of the guys who's ended up getting a job over there, and he was always organising competitions at expos, so he's sort of carried that on in his role in Leeds and organises and tweets about fairly regular competitions that they hold there. So that could be interesting.
We should get them to invite guests, and we'll go along and do panels.
Should do.
Have a word with him. We'll spread our fame far and wide.
I was telling on our party boat in Paris, we had the guys over from our German office as well, and we're all sort of sat chatting about general stuff. Like one of them, he'd only just started as a contractor recently, so we're sort of getting to know him, and they're asking about like what I do in some of my spare time, and I was telling them how I'm in a very niche corner of the internet. I'm semi-internet famous-ish, not at all, but someone did buy me a beer the other week for being on a podcast, so I'm counting it.
And for some reason, Retrohamer wants me to sign his Atari Flashback 2, which I'm happy to do. It's just bemusing when people ask me to sign things.
Well, especially something we had nothing to do with.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I mean, they're friends of ours.
I picked it up in a bargain bin in Portland Retro Gaming Expo. 2 of them, actually. I'm keeping one. This is another. But yeah, I'm happy to sign it. There you go. Just do it, he says. All right, I will.
Fair enough, fine, we'll sign it.
I'll scratch my name into the circuit board.
Yeah, of all the places to scratch your name, that's the one.
All right, well, thank you everybody for tuning in. I think it's going to be a fairly long show this month. The top 10 was reasonably brief, intentionally. Otherwise, you'll be here for a full day listening to this crap. So
what are you doing with your life?
I know.
Question everything.
Sitting here editing, that's what I'm doing with my life.
Okay.
So thank you everybody. We had a few in chat, even though I only announced it yesterday. We've had a busy month trying to schedule everything, and Sparkle is probably going to send us a message in about 2 minutes.
Yeah,
saying
very
you're still
angry on WhatsApp going, where are you guys? Why don't you wait for me?
Yeah, but needs must, and time has run short for the month. So enjoy the show when it's out, and we'll see you again live next month for live news. Be there or be not round. Say good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody.